Good morning. I would like to extend my warm greetings to everyone present here. I am Preeti Dusaija from Symbiosis Skills and Professional University, School of Architecture, Urban Development and Planning, and your host for today. A warm welcome to everyone to the second session of National Conference, My City Through My Lens. The Students' Conference aims to understand through photography, videography, conceptual activity, imagination, storytelling, and many such creative forms to express it to the world. The conference aims to provide students to express their perspective and surroundings. Everyone has a different view about the city they live in or about the city they visit. This conference intends to capture the essence of the individual of city through the mind. I would like to thank the organizers, chair, jury, participants, hosts, and the audience to lighten this event with your presence. Talking about life, let us kindle the diya and pray for the blessings of Goddess Saraswati, the authority of academics and the arts. Now I would like to call upon our strong professional leader with a Doctor of Philosophy degree in Architectural Conservation, being an experienced academician with a demonstrative history of working in architecture and planning academic industry, who has a long experience of setting up new institutes and bringing them to an excellent standard. A clear, logical mind with a practical approach to problem solving and a drive to see things through with a great eye of detail are her positive attributes. Please put your hands together for our respected Vice Chancellor in charge and Head of Department of Symbiosis Skills and Professional University, School of Architecture, Urban Development and Planning, Dr. Gauri Shirkar ma'am. I would like to give you a warm welcome.
Very good morning to all of you. Honorable Pro Chancellor Dr. Swati Mumia, respected Chief Guest Architect Harsh Kabra, Guest of Honor Sri Makran Vikram, City Engineer CMC, Dr. and my colleagues from SSPU, participants, delegates, and to this second part or volume 2 of the National Students Conference, My City Through My Lens, organized by the students of School of Architecture, Urban Development and Planning. This conference is, I call it for the students, and it is hosted by the students of our university. Every city is special, not just because it looks nice, but because nice things and memories makes it extraordinary. Its identity are perceived differently by different individuals. A city is an adaptive self-organizing, and unpredictable system. A city becomes famous because of its people, and we, the inhabitants, have to tell stories about it. It can be seen, identified, experienced in various ways, perspective. Due to globalization, the cityscapes are changing rapidly and the cities are losing their identities. Virtual documentation or the photos which can describe the city through a lens, depending upon an individual's way of perceiving the city. Every city has a peculiar culture, social environment that can be captured, and it tells us a story through photographs, videographs, and writings. Everyone has a different view about the city they live or about the city they visit. Current conference basically aims to understand the story. The basic aim of this conference is to take you towards doing research about your city in a joyful manner. Basically, when we say research and research writing, you feel there is something very difficult to be done. We don't want you to do. Research is something we can apply in our daily lives, and it is extremely important in student life and in professional life as well. So why not do it in a joyful manner? So that was basically the intention behind starting this series of national student conferences, and this is the second national student conference, and we will be hosting similar conferences in the coming years, and my students have to be ready to host such conferences henceforth as well. This is for the new first yearites who have joined recently, and this is their first experience about the conference. So I welcome you all again for this conference and enjoy deliberations happening 2 days. I hope you learn a lot. Thank you so much.
Thank you, ma'am, for your inspiring words. Swati Muzumdar to felicitate our guest of honor, city engineer. Thank you, ma'am. I will call upon Dr. Gauri Shirkar, ma'am, to felicitate our guest of honor, Harsh Kabra, sir. Now, this time that we all show you our little university, the family reunion. We will now present a short film on a college, Symbiosis Skills and Professional University.
Want to take advantage of democratic dividend, it is necessary that you must give jobs to our young men and women. And how can you give them jobs? We can give them jobs by imparting skill education. And in order to satisfy this need, I am glad that Symbiosis is established. A very unique university of its kind in our state. That university.
Symbiosis skills and open university. India to build India. Who is India's first residential skills and open university.
Students who are not looking at everything in the skill-based education. Because that there was a complete lack of vertical mobility. That is from certificate courses all the way up to degree courses in skill-based education. That there is no social activity of people. And
Equipped with specialized cases. SSOU ensures a minimum 70% of teaching is devoted to hands-on training and practical at centers of excellence, learning factories, and industry engagement. In pedagogy inculcates not only our value-based Indian ethos, but also the use of cutting-edge technologies like simulation and augmented reality. The Department of Interdisciplinary Sciences provides programs in soft skills, leadership, entrepreneurship skills, and foreign languages. Symbiosis skills as one of the great of nation building, bringing about a revolution in higher education.
I'd like to call upon our guest of honors, City Engineer PCMC, Mr. Makran Nikam sir, to enlighten us.
Good morning to all. Swati madam, dignitaries on dais and all my friends. City through my lens. So all of you are dreaming your city through my or your lens. But everybody has his own perspective of the city. So there are so many types of city developed with their nature. Okay, some are industrial city, some are historical city. So every city has its nature. But if we see how city develops, so city develops with its own nature. But nobody has decided this will be a historical city. But it is due to its history, it has become a city. So basically, there are some necessities of which should be taken into consideration. That city should have ease of living. Each city, ideal city, I would say, should have always ease of living. So living should be easy. Another some aspects are it should have a basic and good infrastructure. As I have a responsibility to provide infrastructure to this city. So it of maybe, but we should have a good road, good quality of drinking water,
good sewer lines, good drainage work, and then other things. Uh, you may know that the new concept is now that a, a space for gathering the people, because nowadays people are not talking with each other. So you may see while going in our city, there are new roads, we keep benches or sitting space or making space. So there are so many aspects, but due to I have to leave early. So I will conclude. City should have a basic infrastructure, and then what you dream for it. So while dreaming, you always think of this basic infrastructure, and then you think how big city, how cities will be there, which type of city will develop, etc. etc. So I thank, because I have to do for the next assignment. So I thank for the team sympathy. Uh, thank you.
It gives me immense pleasure to introduce you to our respected Prof. Dr. Swati Mazumdar. Dr. Swati Mazumdar is the Vice President, Symbiosis Foundation, and the Pro-Chancellor, Symbiosis Skills University and Indore. Dr. Swati Mazumdar is a global thought leader and a renowned expert in higher education and skill-based vocational education. She is a policy advisor to the state and the federal government, as well as a part of the think tanks established by UNESCO in the fields of technical, vocational, and higher education. Dr. Swati has been doing research in the past many years in the area of skill development and vocational education, and has founded the establishment of two of the India's pioneering skill development universities in Pune and Indore. Dr. Swati has been a recipient of several awards and is invited as a keynote speaker in national and international forums. I would call upon Dr. Swati Majumdar ma'am to enlighten the vision of Symbiosis Skills and Professional University.
A very good morning to all the students, dignitaries on the dais, my dear friend and well-wisher of Symbiosis, Architect Harsh, who is also the voice behind most of the Symbiosis films. And I just also know that that there are many online students who are taking part in various sessions of this conference. So welcome to all the speakers, the chief guests, the guest of honor who just left, the students and all the other faculty who are participating in this conference. As Dr. Gauri said, every city has a story. And this university also has a story, and especially for the newcomers, the new students of architecture. And my father, Dr. Edmund always says that everything in life happens for a reason. And as is the word Marathi says, Niyati means destiny. We are all in certain places at certain times out of coincidence, out of our destiny. And this university driven has also been a matter of coincidence. And the reason I'm saying this, the reason I'm telling you this story, is because when I started doing the research in skill development, I never thought that Symbiosis would establish a skill university. In fact, I made a proposal to the Maharashtra government to establish a skill university in a PPP mode, leadership mode. I still remember that when we drafted the bill, it went to the cabinet, it got approved by the cabinet, and in the then Nagpur session of the assembly, the political reasons, it didn't see the light of the day. And I was so disappointed because on anything that you work very hard and on which you spend a lot of time, and then when it doesn't come to a logical conclusion, as human beings, you do feel dejected. But as Amitabh Bachchan once said, and you must, I'm sure you must know about his statement, which he always says in his speeches, is जो होता है वो आपके अच्छे के लिए होता है, नहीं होता है वो भी आपके अच्छे के लिए होता है. So I think the loss of Maharashtra government was an opportunity for sunrises. Of course, we seized that opportunity, and the Devendra Fadnavis gave us an opportunity to, and in fact, motivated me to establish this university. And it is because this university was established that all of you are here. So certainly, I feel that it is destiny which played a big role. And at that momentary rejection which I felt, in fact, opportunity for sunrises was something that would serve the skill-based of the country. And I don't hesitate to say that because I'm sure all of the students will agree that this is a different system of education and that you are part of this architecture school. It is not just a conventional architecture school. It is certainly not that, because when we developed the curriculum for your BH program, we wanted it to be a holistic program, not only also of urban planning. And that is because in those about 10 years back, the concept of smart cities had started seeing the light of the day. And we felt that architects, if they have to become successful architects, they must have a good idea of urban planning. They must have good ideas of the new concepts like smart cities or metro-based transportation or even other facets of which are all components of your curriculum, which incidentally are not part of any other architecture program. So having said that, as is was said by the earlier speaker, that every city has its story. So we also had a choice when we did the architecture of this campus. The choice we had was we could again build very high-rise buildings. We could go up to maybe 5 floors, 6 floors, 7 floors. But as destiny again would have it, on my numerous journeys to the Mantralaya, which you know the bureaucracy of Maharashtra government sits, on the way to Mantralaya, you all must have noticed, those who visited Bombay, is the Wilson College, which is more than 100 years old and is emphasized, the campus of Wilson College is emphasized and characterized by its arches. And I was fascinated by those arches, I was fascinated by those stone buildings. And perhaps my own childhood, maybe some experiences of my childhood also made me talk to the architects and say that this is the way I wanted this campus to be. I was born on the campus of Encompass, which as you all know is more than 150 years old, established by Gopal Krishna Gokhale and Lokmanya Tilak. And that is where Dr. Mujumdar, the chancellor of this university, and my father was a professor of botany. And my entire childhood was on a college campus where the bungalows were having sloping roofs. They are usually stone-cladded bungalows. The building, the main building of Ferguson College, is a very beautiful archaeological site because it's a very nice British architecture. And so I think those memories of that fascination for stone-clad buildings and the arches and the old architecture architecture probably crept into when I dreamt of what a campus this should be. And therefore, when the architect started designing, I actually drew these arches for him. Although I'm not an architect, I'm not a designer, but I actually drew these arches for him. And I told him this is what my dream was. I wanted a campus which was not high rise, which had sloping roofs. And I still remember it was a long argument that I had with him. And then we finally agreed to sloping roofs with shingles, which were very uncommon and still uncommon. We have imported them from outside for these buildings. Also, the heritage plaster that is put on all these buildings is a very expensive affair. Just for your information, one building heritage plaster costs nothing less than about 1.5 crores. So not only are the buildings stone clad, but the heritage plaster gives it that look of an old era building. Also the passages connect with each other if you've noticed on this campus, because I didn't want the students to step out in the heavy rains or when they wanted to go from one building to the other. So definitely there is a story to tell. I have a story to tell about this campus, how this campus was born, or for that matter, how this university was born. And I always say now I have 3 children. One biological son, my son Amor. The second was the Indore campus, and the third is this campus. So I do have the affection and fascination and a sense of belonging for all my 3 children. And I think this campus, these 2 campuses are very close to my heart because it is actually my dream, which was crystallized by an architect into buildings, into campuses, into landscaping, into gardens, trees, etc. I'm still developing this campus. I still have many more dreams for what will happen on this campus. So I do feel that this conference is a great event to have on such a campus, which has its own story to tell. It is India's first residential university. So you must start your research on this very campus and suggest to me what are the things we can improve on campus. In fact, in this auditorium that you are sitting, if you notice on the walls are the very arches which have been replicated by architect Vishwanathan, who is known in India and abroad for building auditoriums. So again, everything has a story, and I do hope that the deliberations over the next 2 days will help you understand this glorious city of Pune, which has such a grand historical base, with different places. And through your deliberations, we will also learn a lot as teachers and as administrators. I wish the conference a grand success, and let's hope that you come out with some suggestions for all of us in the management on what else we can do on this campus. So thank you and God bless this conference and wish you all the best. Thank you.
Thank you so much, ma'am. The volume 1 of My City Through My Lens has been published with an ISBN number. For the publication of the proceeding, I will call upon the copies of My City Through My Lens Volume 1. It is my pleasure to welcome and introduce Mr. Harsh Kabra, sir. Harsh Kabra is a senior communication professional with more than 2 decades of corporate communication and public relations experience. He is currently the global head of communication and public relations of one of the India's leading IT companies. He earlier worked as the communication lead at a US-based Fortune 200 company where over 20 years in, he drove the company's external communication strategy and program in India, North America, Europe, and Asia Pacific. He is deeply passionate about the corporate sustainability and social accountability as well, and is a CIA certified sustainability assessor. He has also written on diverse topics for a number of top tier print and online publications in India and globally. And he has had long association with audiovisual media as a writer, narrator, and presenter. He is an architect by qualification and has been associated with education, teaching, and academics as well. Over to you, sir.
Thank you so much. A very good morning to all of I hope you can hear my Sorry, ma'am, our guest of honor who's not here. Special invitees and my esteemed friends. This is a wonderful initiative. I've been discussing this idea with ma'am for the last yes. And I think we have no dearth of ideas, but we need people who can execute those ideas and turn those ideas into reality. So I'm really very delighted to see what you're doing here, and this is again student initiative, as I'm told. So it's a great start, a wonderful initiative, and I wish everyone associated with this conference congratulations and all the best. So without any further ado, let me just dive straight into my presentation. I wouldn't call it a presentation. And just to clarify that I have deliberately not kept my focus entirely exclusively on architecture alone. This talk is going to be about a lot of other things as well. We'll probably, if time permits, have a Q&A session towards the end. So if you have any questions, anything whatsoever, it doesn't have to be about the session alone. Please make a note of your question, and we'll have some opportunity after this session to engage in it. Sounds okay?
Yeah.
Does that sound okay? That's fine.
So what? Oh, you're not going to pay.
If I ring a bell, I'm sure many of you are addicted to this popular TV show. The point I'm trying to make here is something that we will, of course, discuss in the next 20, 25 minutes, 30 minutes. But while we are still at eBay, let me share another story with you. Back in 2006, quite intrigued by the power of storytelling, and of course, this conversation has been on for a number of years now. The importance of storytelling, the impact of storytelling. Noted New York Times Magazine journalist called Ron Walker, he undertook an interesting study. He wanted to figure out what is this whole myth of storytelling all about? How does it reflect in our everyday life? So what he did, he went ahead and bought 200 items, objects of practically zero intrinsic value. Things like a plastic banana, maybe an old room key, hotel room key, right? Those kinds of things. And the cost was less than $1. He bought 200 of those, and then he reached out to 200 professional authors, asking them to write stories about each of those objects. They happily obliged. Next, he went on to eBay to auction those very objects. And imagine what happened. For example, this plastic bust of a horse's head, which cost him 99 cents. Can you imagine how much it sold for? $63.50. Why? Because there was a story associated with that plastic bust. So effectively, he spent what, about $197 buying all of those 200 objects, and he made more than $8,000 at the end of that exercise. How much would that be in mathematical terms? About 6,300% markup in the original price. Right? How did that happen? It's all the power of story. Okay? If you can overpay for a shoe on eBay just because you think it belonged to the late Shania Twain, and then you end up buying all of these objects with practically zero value, or it did eventually. It all talks about the power of stories. Stories are the most powerful tools at our disposal, and I need not repeat this very obvious truth because we are all here because we believe in the power of storytelling. What makes stories so potent? What makes stories so important? Because they play on our emotions. They evoke, invoke, stir up, right? Give a channel, give a direction to our emotions. And anything which has any kind of an emotional connect in our lives is always extremely important, far more important than something that doesn't. Okay? What kind of emotions are we talking about here? I'll cite an example. I don't know how many of you are aware of this, but there was a time when Omega watches used to sell very briskly. They used to do rolling business. Any idea what that might be? Omega watches? I'm going to keep this interactive because I do not know. I just want to ascertain that you have the right levels of involvement. Any guesses? Any wild guesses? Omega watches? No? They have an association with James Bond. So Omega watches used to see this business essentially because of this connection. People did not even wear those watches because they were either too expensive or too cumbersome to wear. But because they had some association with James Bond, who doesn't want to be like it, right? They always sold very well. So the power of stories is there a good book, a good speech, a good photograph, a good work of art, a good story, right? Everything. It speaks to the power of storytelling and to the merit of emotion in that. What emotions are we talking about?
I've come up with a series of exercises to help with your compulsive need for closure. Well, I take issue with the word compulsive. All I'm saying is we live in a world where closure isn't always an option. Shun, okay.
Cliffhangers, suspense, incomplete sentences. There seem to be no rush to go forward. So you can use some of these tools. Imagine something like that. Obviously not meant to annoy your colleague or your peer, but anything which has a suspense or a cliffhanger or which develops in a certain manner, it's always the trigger for some kind of emotion. What emotion are we talking about here? Dopamine. Has anyone heard about that? What is dopamine? It's a neurotransmitter in our body that plays the role of a reward center and determines many of our functions like memory, movement, motivation, mood, attention, and more. Right? You saw how we create closure, and if we do not get closure, our mind starts thinking twice as fast, twice as hard. So the power of story, the obvious chemical explanation for why you react to certain stories in a certain manner is this.
Check.
What would you call this emotion? Just shout out from where you are. You don't have to be right or wrong, just an answer would do. Sorry, a little louder. Sad, okay. Okay, a more appropriate word might be empathy. Correct? We haven't been through this situation ourselves, God forbid. But we can quite relate to the emotion that is at play there. Empathy. You put yourself in the situation of the subject and you try and live that experience yourself. This also releases a certain kind of a hormone or neurotransmitter. It's called oxytocin. Right? What does it do? This is the hormone related with concepts like trust, relationship building, sympathy, right? The ability to relate to someone's pain and loss, or even the ability to feel very drawn, very affectionate towards someone. Okay? In other words, something that makes us more human than we typically are. All right, that was the second example. I'm just trying to provide some kind of a scientific rationale for why stories are so important. It's not just a play of words, it's not just a play of ideas, but there are scientific merits to it. There is a scientific justification. Creation of positive feelings. This makes you feel good, right? It's not a situation that is unknown to any one of us here. On my way here, I think I saw oodles of that this morning. So that is another way of evoking that emotion. The positivity of ideas, initiative, enterprise, any kind of an accomplishment, action, celebration, and so on. What does this release? Endorphin. What is endorphin? One of the many substances made in the body that can relieve pain and inspire a feeling of well-being. All right, so your stories are all these and so much more. Right? Now, in the Friends video, for example, if you were to replay Shania Twain with a different story and those shoes with an actual city, you figured out a gold standard of making the city, the brand equity of that city, so much more attractive and so much more appealing. That is how you apply storytelling to a city. To your vision of a city, to your experiences of a city, to your anecdotes about the city. Right? A lot of cities around the world are now utilizing this storytelling element quite effectively for various purposes. It could be either to draw tourists, which is obviously the backbone of the economy of a number of cities. Plus, at the same time, it's also meant to reinforce this sense of belonging and participation in the citizens, in the residents of that city, so that they can come together, feel one, and they can collectively attend to all of the causes which are absolutely necessary for that city to evolve to the next level. Right? Stories are endemic, they're all over the place. I'm pretty sure we were engaged in a conversation before all of us came on the stage. Some of the stories might be half done. Probably you'll catch up on those stories over lunch later. They're all over the place. Even the introduction that was made about me is actually a story because it helps you locate yourselves in my journey and it helps me find myself in whatever you are doing here. It's a two-way street. But what exactly is storytelling? I personally like this definition provided by sociologists at the University of California. No rocket science, it's a straightforward definition, quite self-explanatory. But if you see, I've highlighted a few words there. What is the idea behind that? If you look at each word, sharing, combining, knowledge, experiences, narratives, anecdotes, we have plenty of each of these elements. Each one of us, regardless of where we come from, what we do in life, we have plenty of these elements, and we also have the ability to bring all of that together, which is how we keep conversing with our friends, with our family, with people in our community. So there is no dearth of ammunition or raw material for you to become storytellers. They are all over the place. What does it take then to create a good captivating story? I'm just going to quickly go through a set of pointers or a set of elements which I personally found to be extremely useful in my writing career, in my career as a communication professional. When I talk to people, obviously, I'm telling stories, but when I listen to them, I'm also trying to figure out what their story is, and that makes the conversation that much more lively. Okay? Select an appropriate story, something that goes with the occasion, with your personality, and with your ability to deliver that story. Okay? Always be mindful of who you are as an individual, what your core strengths are, and then select stories accordingly. Your occasions will require you to make adjustments every once in a while, which is fine, which is all right, but you can always bridge back to whatever you find most comfortable. All right? Always adapt your stories to present day concerns. No one wants to listen to what years ago unless there is a takeaway, unless there is an element of relevance in that story for them today. Okay, students of history of architecture would know this. You study a whole lot of architectural innovation and contributions that happened in the distant past. I'm pretty sure your professors or even the academic projects that you work on require you to relate to how that has influenced the architectural thought from there on, how that has influenced the social outlook from there on. There is always an interaction between the society and the work of architecture that you study. And it doesn't happen in the vacuum, it doesn't happen in the void. So always try and relate it to the contemporary present, because that's one short way of drawing the reader, viewer, audience, whoever it is that you are dealing with. Tell the story from the view of someone at the scene. What do I mean by that? You are trying to engage your audience. The one short way of doing that is to recreate the sights, the sounds, the smells, the movements, the body language, the expressions, the conversations, the conspicuous and inconspicuous movements, everything. Try and capture all of that. You could be a photographer, right? Most photographers who've done this very well are famous or are heralded for their work because their eye for detail is legendary. It's a force to reckon with. Writers who go into the extreme details of where they are, where the story is situated, right? They are also extremely famous. I don't know if you've read this book. I'm forgetting the name. Inferno, Dan Brown. Yeah, there's a lot of history about specific cities in Europe there. And some would think that it's probably an extension of Wikipedia. But that was not the objective of the writer when he created all of those pieces of anecdotes and insights into the architecture of the city. It had a certain bearing on the story itself. It's trying to get you to visualize where the setting is, where the story is playing out. Right? So always tell the story from someone else's point of view. You can make it as live as possible. That's the only way to suck in the reader's attention. Timeline. Okay. Establish the story's central truths. Okay. You start out with a research project. Oh my God, how am I going to do this? Right? The topic is this much, but you have tons of work to do around that. It's always advisable to capture the outcome of any effort that you undertake in one sentence or one question which you will address as part of that activity. Why is that so important? It helps you generate the right kind of focus. Everything you do from there on, right from your research to the final decision about what part of that research to include in your project, to the actual story, to the outcome, to the choice of audiovisual material, everything will align with that question. You know this is required, you know what is context, you know what is core, and the rest of it is context. So you can filter out the fluff. Always start with this. I think focus is something that I usually find missing in a lot of research projects. And I thought I should highlight this because as journalists, we are supposed to capture an entire story in 400 words, nothing more than that. Otherwise, the editor will bring in his or her creativity and you don't want to live with that outcome. It's not always pleasant. So how do you make sure that you're giving your audience what they're looking for and what is most relevant and most impactful in the context in which you are working? Okay. Craft stories in a manner that everything aligns with the outcome. You've already figured out what you want the story to communicate, but your entire story will also have to evolve in a manner that you're able to do justice to the end there. Takeaways are extremely important. You know, all stories are made up of 3 elements. One is the exposition, the time, setting, place, initial introduction to the characters, etc. We've all heard this, right? Once upon a time in a village far, far away. Those were fairy tales. We are not here to write fairy tales. We are writing real, meaningful stories for real people, real audiences. So be as specific as you can, because that also helps you engage with the reader, gain the attention of the reader. Second part of the story, one is exposition, second is conflict. Conflict is why stories are made. Conflict is not necessarily a physical duel or any kind of a tussle. Conflict is the whole elaboration leading up to the outcome of the story or takeaway of the story. So conflict is extremely important. Now here also, be very careful that you are not completely swayed by your own worldview. Just because you don't like an individual or you don't like a certain genre of architecture, right? Please don't start out in an opinionated manner. That is not required or expected of a storyteller. You need to give the audience, the reader, the liberty to make those decisions. You are relaying the story for what it is, the way things happen. Okay? And the third part is Act 3 is the resolution. To introduce the cast and the characters, the setting, you've spoken about the conflict which has brought them together in the story in the first place. Then what is the resolution? In the resolution part, always remember that it has to be words we weight for every reader, for every member of the audience. If you provide something which is extremely flimsy, which is extremely subjective, right, based on your own individual worldview, or which is not quite in keeping with the whole effort you took to build up the story in the first place, then that is a sure disappointment for the reader. You've seen a whole lot of movies, right? 2.5 hours of excessive special effects, some very histrionic scenes, too much of acting, overacting, whichever way you look at that. And suddenly the director realizes my time is up. Let me kill a few characters. Let me get a few characters married off and let the others travel to wherever. You feel let down. Those movies do not do a brisk business. Okay, if you read some of the review columns in the newspapers, thankfully they are back now that people are returning to the theaters. Always look at how they deal with the whole idea of where the story is taking you. Okay, that's an extremely judicious, extremely mature for every filmmaker. So you have to bear in mind that your conclusion has to be compelling, impactful, not something that is flimsy, not in keeping with the. Find the memory hook. How many students do you have in each class here? 50, 60, right? Imagine the plight of the jury when they are assessing your research reports. 60 reports with more or less the same kind of a structure, probably even the same beginning in certain instances. You never know. How do you create that memory hook? How do you stand out of the clutter? in the opening, in the first page, in the opening argument, you think of something which creates that kind of a memory hook, which the jury will remember, stood out from the rest of the reports. It's up to you. I'm not giving you any actionable advice here, but something for you to think about. I'm not going to leave you with actual pieces of how those openings could be. That is not the idea of this presentation. But always remember that you don't start out in a very prosaic, predictable manner. Okay? My building consists of XYZ areas. No. You're not there to explain, this is the entrance, this is the living room, this is the, whichever other space, courtyard. They can all see for themselves. Why do we need you for that story? Is because you have appraised, you have analyzed, you've understood that story in a certain manner. Bring that perspective. That is most important. Memory hook. And tell a story within a story. You've seen those Russian nesting dolls, right? You remove one, the other one comes out, it goes on. Very interesting. Your story should be something like that. All of you watch soaps, right? Soaps which go on to about 400 episodes, 500 episodes, breaking record after record. What gives them the ambition to keep going for that long a period? Obviously, there is an overarching plot, but there are multiple subplots within that plot. And all of them, while they lead up to the same conclusion or maybe the common conclusion, they still have their own sets of expositions, conflicts, and resolutions. Try and follow that style, especially when you're making presentations. It can be extremely boring to just stick to one story from the start to the end. On the contrary, you can create an individual story for every sub-theme. Okay? And then bring them all together towards the end.
It's time for you to give your maid of honor speech.
Oh, wait a minute, we haven't even proposed. Okay. Webster's dictionary defines marriage as a.
Not say anything about this. This happens to all of us all the time. You are required to do something without adequate preparation, and this is the shortcut we take. Okay? Please be creative and imaginative about the way you begin your research reports, your projects, your design information, your story essentially. And it's not a rocket science again. I keep maintaining it's not a rocket science. Those perspectives are right inside you. Create a list, figure out something which you don't expect your colleagues, which your classmates to present. That becomes your own individual perspective. So always plan the opening of your story. Research the facts and be truthful. There is no shortcut to research. Please make sure that stories are still ingrained in truth, that they are still planted in truth. Storytelling is not about fibbing or fabricating. Okay? Spinning the yarn, fine. It's a thesaurus explanation for what storytelling is all about. We're not here to do that. Why? Because you run a very high risk. The cookie can crumble even before you realize. Okay? So never fib or fabricate. Research your facts very well and stay true to those facts. Okay? Why is that so very important? Another advice that goes as a corollary to that piece is that while you do your research, do not get overly entangled in your own view and plant that view very deeply in your research. Don't try and extract stories when none exists. Because I'm a storyteller, I have to be full of stories. Okay? This remote control, hugely helpful to me right now. Okay? For the audience, it means nothing. All right? So always look at everything you determine from an audience's perspective.
Round one. Here.
Got it.
Okay.
Please not get that.
universe is our present, it is not our present, it's the present. It's you, me, it's Kenny, Amy. We're playing dictionary. The present.
Eliminate needless clutter and detail. You want your audiences to on what you're trying to tell them. If you yourselves overcrowd the narrative with too many different things because you want to sound rich, you want to sound efficient, you want to sound authentic, it just takes the focus away from the core writing. Okay. And the other extremely important part, and that is also one of the tips for you, is that no two members of the audience will interpret a certain idea in exactly the same manner. And you have to give them that room for their own interpretation. The more efficiently you are able to do that, the better your impact is as a storyteller. Add description to the story. Description, right? I just mentioned the example of Dan Brown. Again, you look at the way people react. Some people thought it was excessive description of architecture in Europe. Some people thought it helped transport their mind to the actual location where the story was playing out. So description is a double-edged sword. You have to handle it responsibly, yet authentically, and to the right measure. Why do we even remember stories? I was talking to you about the introduction and how you and I get to connect at a certain level by way of that introduction. Stories are successful because you want to find yourselves in those stories, or you see yourself in those stories. Okay? If this was happening to someone else far, far away, perhaps you will not take that story away with you. All right. I think the insistence in the human brain is to make sense of everything. We are very curious, we are very logical, we are very rational. And unless we are able to bring all of those pieces together and make sense out of it, some activities do not quite sound as fulfilling or as satisfying as they should. All right. So always look at what kind of description you are providing, the extent of that description and the depth of that description, as well as the relevance of that description. How is all of this relevant to city storytelling? Cities are also very complex living organisms, right? You have characters, you have facts, you have events, you have emotions, all of that. Now, if you could just take a moment to think about your last research project or whatever you may have done, maybe a design presentation to your jury, and tell me how many of you actually went beyond the architecture itself, just the walls, the doors, the spaces, the courtyards, the pagodas, and actually brought in facts, brought in emotions, brought in events, brought in characters. We don't do that instinctively. Like I was telling someone this morning that we call this institute Skills and Professional University. Why is it that psychologically we are tuned to skills or professional university? Why does everything have to be about the subject you are here to study? Why can't you just expand the boundaries of your worldview? Look at that profession, look at that discipline in the context of a holistic whole. That is the point I'm trying to make, right?
I don't understand.
But those who just get
It doesn't make any sense.
It's smart. I use a thesaurus. On every word.
Yeah.
Oh, they're warm, nice people with big hearts. And that became, they're human prepossessing Homo sapiens. Punks.
Hey, I really mean it.
Yeah, right to express, not to impress. A lot of us get carried away. Please remember, and this is a point I really, really want you to remember for a very long time to come. Your ability as a communicator, language is definitely a very important part of that, but language is not the only part. It's the merit of ideas which sells more than such flimsy use of language or flimsy part of language. Okay? A lot of you will question this. I don't have to be a literature, I don't have to be a politician, I don't have to deliver speeches ever. Why do I even care if I know a language well or not? You talk to your colleagues, you talk to your co-workers, you talk to your bosses, you talk to your family members, community gatherings. Each one of those conversations say a lot about you as individuals. You don't want to do anything to goof that up or create the wrong impression in the minds of people who work with you. So please remove this obsession that if your professional trajectory does not demand that you be good in a language, you can just give language a backseat. No. Everything is a part of who you are as an individual and as a package. What do you see here? It's a very common image all over the internet. Some of you may even have seen it. What do you see here? Which animal? Duck. Yes, there was another answer. Louder, please. Rabbit. Okay. Always have some accommodation, consideration, respect, appreciation for this duck versus rabbit conundrum. Your audience is going to interpret your message in the most unexpected ways. Be prepared for those surprises. Make enough room for that to happen. Which is what including audience participation is all about. Okay? I don't know, but there is this one dialogue in most Hindi movies, soaps, which absolutely annoys me. आप कहना क्या चाहते हैं? मैं कुछ समझा नहीं. It's a very trick, it's a beaten way of taking the story forward because the writers assume that the audience is so dumb that they probably not understood what the writer is trying to communicate. So they try and emphasize that same point over and over again. You compare Indian movies with movies from the West. I don't want to cite any particular one, but I'm a big fan of French movies. Very subtle. No dialogues. I mean, I watch French movies. I do not understand French. Okay, even then I enjoy. So the point I'm trying to make is that language is inconsequential there. The story explains itself, right? Their expressions, their body language, the way the frames connect with each other. You don't have to put everything down in words. You don't have to have dialogues for everything. Don't overfeed the audience. Don't consider they are dumb. Okay? So include audience participation. Guard against the so what pitfalls. So what? Yeah? If you're just pressing the same conventional emotional buttons, people don't care. Too much of emotion can be extremely annoying, nauseating. Know where to draw the line. If you have an emotion which is differentiated, right? Try and present it in a manner that gives me a first-time experience, the feel of a first-time experience. It should not be predictable. It should not be great. All of those Rona movies, right? I mean, today we look back and joke and laugh about it. But there was a time when you have to have a crying mother in a movie for audiences to sob endlessly for the hero to come out as a real hero. More. I mean, I know the way we sell patriotism these days in our movies is more or less bordering on that. All of your army movies, that kind of thing. But that is the necessity for that particular story. How else do you communicate the extent of sacrifice which those individuals are making or would be making? But otherwise, please stay away from extremely conventional, predictable emotions. If you still want your story to hit home, you can either find new ways to address some of your themes, or otherwise just play upon the motivations of the audience. If they are there listening to your presentation because of a certain reason, go to the next level, go to the third deep level, and give them what they are there for. Practice audiences, always seek feedback. You're not giving away a trade secret by seeking feedback. Please be open to feedback all the time. I know it's not very easy for architecture students because everything is so my creativity, my presentation, why should I let my classmate know about it? But you enrich your narrative by seeking additional feedback, external feedback. You may not have thought about something the way someone else could, and that could absolutely destroy the central premise of your story. So let that happen when there is time. When it is too late, obviously there is no amends for that. Now, I have been speaking to the faculty about photography, and I know a lot of you are into photography very actively. So whatever I've described now, how does a change of medium impact all of that? What if you're writing an essay? What if you're out with your camera taking photographs? What if you're creating a painting? What if you have a video camera? Videography is an extremely common hobby nowadays. So medium does matter, but some of these fundamentals still remain the same. Okay, how many of your photographers, by a show of hands? Oh, that's very true. Some are having second thoughts about whether to position themselves as photographers. All right, now when you're doing photography, what are the things you look for? Light, correct? Composition, subjects. I'm not a photographer, so I'm just giving out something which I understand as a layperson. Let's try and unpack some of these concepts. Light, why do you need light? So that you are able to appreciate contrast, details, right? Sharpness, vividness, whatever. Light helps you understand your subject. Who are the subjects? People, situations, movements, expressions. Life itself is a subject. And composition. Composition is within that frame of a photograph. How are you placing it vis-a-vis everything else? The context, the background, complementarity, tonality, right? All of those. I don't know if these words ring a bell. Okay, I don't want to sound stupid in front of people who are deeply into photography, but this is my interpretation of what photography is all about. The same concepts can be applied to a piece of written work. We're all talking about detail, we're all talking about composition, background, context, we're all talking about subjects. So the point I'm trying to make is that regardless of the medium, some of these steps will remain the same all over. You've all heard about why it is not good to take photographs from an eye level. A lot of expert photographers say that. Correct? Why is it not good to take photographs from an eye level? Not always good. That is, of course, sometimes it is necessary. Any ideas? Eye level? I'm sure every one of you has this photograph in your kitty. You've been to Taj Mahal at some of the other point, and you've taken this picture. Very gratifying. How many have this? Which one engages you more? Of the answers here, I'm just comparing these two pictures. The second one, yeah, a little more interesting than that eye level view. Why? Because we've all seen it from the eye level. What is the photograph giving me that I haven't already seen? Okay, the idea is not that you just climb up on a pole the next time you have a camera. Okay, that is not the idea here. I'm just trying to suggest that if you can break the mold of conventionality of something which the audiences are already aware of, you're doing yourselves a great service. Let me come to your core discipline now, city. Okay, I haven't seen the work that you have produced as part of this competition or as part of this conference, but I'm pretty sure you focused on people, customs, architecture, food, maybe some interesting vignettes of city life, some interesting perspectives of how people behave in the city of Pune, right? Maybe landscape, maybe social customs, maybe traditions, idiosyncrasy. Yeah, Pune is known for that. I've been here long enough to know what those idiosyncrasies are. So I'm pretty sure you've done all of that. Just remember that when you're trying to capture the city, you're actually speaking to an audience which finds a lot of commonality in their struggles, in their achievements, and accomplishments as part of being a resident of that city. So do always bear that in mind that you and I, as storytellers of a city, have that much more responsibility because we understand the space a little better than the others. We don't understand it inside out, just a little bit better. Because we are not only citizens, but we are also custodians of our city. So what is it you wish to change about the city? That your work, your research, your project, your story can make a contribution. Very quickly, these 4 steps. Again, I've been doing some reading on this topic, and this is something that caught my attention. What are the 4 things that you need to bear in mind? First of all, you have to be very mindful of the city's identity and image. What is image? The way it is perceived by people. What is its identity? What it wishes to be, what it aspires to be. Okay, always have that at the back of your mind. Ascertain where these two come together. Okay, how do these come together? What is the research that you are trying to highlight? What are the points that are takeaways from that at the end of the day? Formulate your core story, a single focused message which we discussed earlier, and always mind for uniqueness. I don't know, if you look at the city of London, you go to London and most of the Londoners will say, oh, this is a smart city, everyone wants to come here, work here, live here. Whenever I went to that city, I found it extremely impersonal, cold. Not weather-wise, cold people, right? There are parts of the city which are extremely unkempt, dirty, and expensive. Oh my, it is probably one of the most expensive cities in the world. Now, these are two contrasting opinions. As a storyteller, you don't want to be taking sides, but you want to be objectively outlining both aspects of the city. Whatever makes that city vibrant is this contradiction. And as a storyteller, that is your best ammunition, is your best vocabulary. Okay? Finally, what should a good message encompass? I'm just going to leave you with 5 keywords. Not the be all and end all of storytelling. Obviously, there could be many more. I'm just speaking from my experience. Humanistic, focus on people, please. Architecture, urban design is not just about brick, mortar, concrete, right? Open spaces, landscape. It's all about the people. Please focus on the people. Please make it humanistic. And it doesn't make you less of an architect if you focus on people. Actionable. Use the attributes and values of city to attract people's attention. I don't know, these are very subtle messages, but I don't have the time to get into the details of that. But always remember, as a point that your city means something to every individual, and that may not be written. Testable. The gap between the image and the identity that I was talking about right here. Okay, the reality of Mumbai and how it projects itself to the rest of the world. Nothing right or wrong about it. This is just how it is. You acknowledge, you accept, and you move on. Make it the central premise of everything you say about this. Clarity. Get up close and personal to all of the different aspects of the city. We've all seen this, right? Pro performers in our neighborhood all the time. Not so long ago. Okay. I think some of us experienced this just about 2 days ago. And this is the story of most cities. I was speaking to one of our special guests from Bangalore. They've had more than their fair share of water in the last few days. Okay? Get very close, personal, visual about everything that you notice about the city. If not by your photographs, most certainly by your words. Whatever comes more effortlessly and more easily. Happiness. Yeah, the fifth value, fifth is the most important. Ensure that the city message is meaningful to the residents and to you as a creator, as a storyteller. Okay? Look at the energy in the left-hand side photograph. Look at this. We endlessly crib about the traffic situation in Pune, and yet we make our contribution to that problem this way. Every year, year after year, without batting an eye. That is what the dynamism, the vibrance of the city is, of us as a collective population. Okay? So the final point is stories are everywhere. You engage in these stories all the time. It could be a water cooler discussion, some piece of gossip. You like someone, all the colorful criticisms come out. That's okay. You like somebody's work, you want to find out more about how that individual arrived with that. That's a story in itself. Okay. Stories are an art, all right, but they are not rocket science that you cannot master. So please get rid of this aversion, this fear, this reluctance. That storytelling is for someone out there. I don't even need to worry about it. You have to. Because you never know when you run into a Shania Twain situation, or you never know when you have to auction off objects of practically zero value on eBay. Storytelling also has far more legitimate applications than that. But this is exactly why storytelling is an important part of who you are, of what you represent, what you wish to do in life. Okay, those were all the thoughts I had. Any questions? I know we are over time. Happy to take questions. Thank you. Hungry? All right. I'll let you proceed to lunch. I don't know, but there is something else after this. Please do not exit the auditorium. Any questions at all? Anything that you wish to know? Not just about what we've discussed here, about anything else. Anything at all? Yes, yes, please.
Do you have any practical advice?
Oh, sure. That's a very interesting to analyze someone else's story. Okay. As a reader of someone else's story, trust me, you're going to be the worst critic of that piece. Okay. So if it doesn't evoke any of these emotions that we just discussed about, and these are only representative emotions. Okay? It can as well be anger, it can also be, the whole feeling of being in the presence of someone obnoxious. Okay, I have seen the corporate life from very close, and I know that when some presentations begin, the whole body language, the choice of words, the flow of ideas is enough to put you off in the very second minute. Obnoxious, right? So you will know whether you are able to engage with that story. If it does not quite rivet your attention, if it does not quite sustain your attention, it is not doing its job well. But if you have to be a critic, you cannot just go by your experience of that story. You have to do something, you have to do some kind of a survey to find out if others feel about it the same way as you do. And that is a sure shot giveaway that the story is not working. Movies, I mean, they just bomb at the box office, right? Crores of moviegoers, and some of these movies just don't take off. It's not that one individual's opinion is at play there. You obviously think the same way as a collective lot. That is the answer to you. Does that help? Yes. I'm just going to repeat your question. What is the need for communications professionals in the architecture industry? Okay, wonderful question. I'm glad someone asked that. Why is it that people relate to professions like medicine, law, even fine arts for that matter, far more than they relate with architecture, despite the fact that architecture is all around them? It's because for the most part, we as a profession have not been able to communicate our stand. We've not been able to endear ourselves to the rest of the society. All of that can happen if you start communicating more and communicating in a more structured, organized, and effective manner. It's a conversation that happens between you and your jury member because you're subject matter experts. How many of us have made this attempt to go out of that canvas and interact with common people? I find that a little offensive. People who are not from architecture. Communication. You have to get to the level of your audience in order for you to start making sense as a communicator. That's why we need communications professionals in architecture. And as I said, and Gauri ma'am and I were discussing, let not architecture be about architecture alone. Please look beyond the brick, mortar, stone. There is so much more to life. Your buildings do not function in isolation or in a vacuum. There's an entire ecosystem. How many of us focus on that ecosystem? I know this because I stepped into another profession, and then when I took an outside view of the profession, I realized, oh my God, I could not have been more wrong. That's why we need architecture. Hence, thank you. Yes.
Hello, sir. I have a question. What are the opportunities in the field of communication?
Okay, that's actually the best question of the day, but it's also got a very open-ended answer for me. Communication works everywhere, everywhere. You create a service, you create a product, you create whatever, social service, politics, entertainment, business. You need to be communicating your story to the outside world. I mean, we just saw those two examples, right? Whatever Rob Walker did for those 100, 200 objects. That is what we are doing. The objects or the things that we are supposed to be, again, promoting is a kind of a misleading word, but we are all here to achieve something. We could either be in services, we could even be in trade, business, right? We are taking something to the outside world. How do you package that in a manner that it resonates with the end user or with the consumer or someone who's supposed to be your core audience? So communication applies to everything, absolutely everything. Right from the way your books are written, right? Architecture books. And you can look at the medley of styles that play here. Some books you like because they are far more understandable, relatable. Some others you don't quite even touch with a large folio. It's all out there. Somebody has written for someone's individual pleasure. So that is where the essence of communication plays out in terms of application everywhere. I mean, you talk to your family members, right? You try and convince your mother for something which you are very sure your father is not going to pay a sympathetic ear to or attention to. That's communication for you. Yeah. You just don't think of it as organized structured communication, but you are engaging. Does that help?
So, while writing a story, should we put our audience point of view first, or the thing we want, like the content we want to express first?
Very good question. Not the audience's point of view, but definitely their worldview. Okay. What they might pick up. See, you're writing the story because there is a point of view which you want to communicate to your audience. So you're not sacrificing anything or the essence of that idea. But you've got to be aware of the sensitivities of the overall receptivity of your audience to something. Make it unbiased, make it objective. Help the audience make an informed decision about your point of view, whatever it is that you are communicating through that story. That's where your success as a storyteller lies. If you dish out something which is very absolute, then that is not the purpose. If you dish out something which is just, all over the place, that's again not, because you're not helping them arrive at any kind of a time. The resolution part, right? It's also a transformation. I want to feel something within myself when I read or see that. Have I changed myself? Am I feeling enriched in any manner? So you've got to give them that opportunity. So you're not sacrificing your individuality with the audience. It's like, you create a movie just because that thing sells. Not always the best tactic. But if you create something which leads to some kind of a social change or awareness, etc., obviously Rob can make us talk about that. I don't think we are even in a position to change the way we think and behave just on the basis of movies. But yeah, that is another way of looking at that. That's what movies as a storyteller. Is that clear? Anyone else?
So how can I have an unbiased opinion when I'm trying to explain known facts in this?
Sorry, come again.
How can I have an unbiased opinion? Like how can I explain an unbiased opinion when I'm already explaining known?
Okay. Interesting question. When you explain your design, I'll give you two scenarios. My design is the best. My design attempts to address the problem in a certain manner, which others may or may not have attempted so far. Which of the two statements do you like? Which of the two statements will lie with your jury?
Second.
Right? So you're not biased, but at the same time, you have a point of view which they are bound to think about. They may or may not accept that, it's a different matter. That is how you present it. You feel very passionately about a certain thing. I don't know if any one of you have watched this video, it's available on YouTube in quite a few sites. Oscar Boyson, who's a professional movie producer, director, and writer. He did some kind of an exercise where he just loaded a few videos on YouTube saying, I want to make a documentary on how people around the world have solved some pressing problems in their city. He got dozens of responses. People invited him over to their countries, and it became a good, nice movie chronicling several cities. Right? What was the whole motivation for that to happen? He didn't know that the cities were in need of some kind of a fix. He was trying to scout for what that fix could be. And amongst the responses that he received, he was able to determine that right, to economize or optimize their use of water. Concept was immediately lapped up by Cape Town a couple of years ago. You must have all read stories about how that city didn't have water, how just didn't actually use any water in very grim situation. So some of these stories also have the ability to inspire others. A point of view, yes, but you're not suggesting that a course of action is the effectively one. And again, it's all contextual driven. I think there is nothing right or wrong, right? If you talk about superstition, you know for a fact that it has no place in contemporary society. So it's okay to feel very passionate, very attached to that idea. But social media, some of you can criticize, some of you think that it is absolutely necessary for this day and age. So pick and choose your commitment to an idea extremely pragmatically. Do not paint yourselves in a corner. Do not start throwing a line of thought which will render you completely out of circulation, irrelevant, obsolete, beyond the point. So no rights and wrongs here, but you have to bear this in mind that the more you feel married to an idea, the less strongly or seriously people will feel about your product. Does that help?
Yes, sir. Thank you. Sir, I'm so sorry to interrupt. This is a very
You're out of
interesting
time.
session. Probably you could give us a contact where we could contact you for further queries.
Absolutely, no problem. So my email address is my full name harshkabra@gmail.com. If any of you have any questions, if you run into dilemmas, you don't quite know what to do with it, please feel free to reach out to me and I'll try my best to be of help to you. Thank you so much again for giving me an opportunity. And thanks for your patience.
It was an amazing session. Now I would request Architect Manjusha Gokhale to end this session on a grateful note and give us a vote of thanks.
Thanks, Preeti. That was indeed a wonderful talk by Architect Kabra on how to create a story. Now, as we come to an end of today's inaugural session for the national conference, My City Through My Lens, I would like to propose a formal vote of thanks on behalf of the students of SEUDP, as this conference is by the students and for the students. I thank our chief guest and the keynote speaker for the conference, Architect Harsh Kabra, for his presence and sharing his valuable knowledge and learnings with the students and with all of us. I also thank our guest of honor, Mr. Makarand Nikam, City Engineer PCMC, for accepting our invitation and be with us for this session for some time at least. I would take this opportunity to thank the management of SSPU our beloved and respected Chancellor, Sir, Dr. S. B. Mujumdar, our very dear and respected Pro-Chancellor, Ma'am, Dr. Swati Mujumdar, our dear Vice Chancellor, Ma'am, in charge, Dr. Gauri Shurkar, who is also our director, and directors of all the schools for their continued support and guidance from time to time. I extend my gratitude to all the dignitaries and invitees, delegates also, for their presence to this event. No event is possible without the proper support of admin staff. So I would like to extend thanks to our team looking after all the stage arrangements for this event. Last but not the least, I would like to thank our faculty and dear students for their hard work and cooperation to conduct this event. Thanks to all, offline and online.
I would request you all to be seated until I guess you, and then we have a short break of 10 minutes. You may disperse to your classes and continue joining the Zoom link. We continue the session.